6, is that right? Well, welcome everyone to Ways and Means Committee. Sorry that we're starting 2 minutes late. Some technical difficulties. We're having a voting session right now on just one bill introduced by the administration, passed already by the Senate. It's Senate Bill 496, and Delegate Lukey, the majority leader, who also chairs our Revenue Subcommittee, will explain the bill and the amendments that are before us. Everyone should have received those amendments from committee staff in the last little while. So go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me start by saying thank yous to the members of the subcommittee, in particular, Delegate Barnes, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, and Delegate Buckle, who sort of informally were in a work group chatting about this over the last couple of weeks, as well as to DLS and George Butler, who have worked incredibly long hours trying to get this ready in time, to the comptroller staff, particularly Manny, the chief of staff, who's been very helpful, to Kiefer Mitchell and Allie Keene on the governor's staff, and to the folks at the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce. What we have in front of us is essentially a compromise between the positions of the House, the Senate, and the governor. You'll recall that when the governor introduced the bill, it included provisions directed at assisting individuals through direct payments and some tax deductions, as well as businesses through a series of tax changes. The Senate kept the version that the governor had introduced largely intact and added to it $520 million of spending in a variety of categories. Over the last few days, we've been having conversations with the Senate and with the governor's office and have reached the compromise that is found in these amendments. The House position throughout has been to push for as much targeted assistance as possible for the people that are affected the most by the pandemic and the recession. And that means low-income folks, and that means small businesses and small nonprofits. So I'm going to walk through explaining what the amendments do to change the bill. The first amendment is technical. Amendment number 2 takes an subtraction modification in the governor's original bill, which exempted unemployment income from taxation completely and permanently, and instead sets that as a 2-year deduction, so that anybody who collected unemployment benefits in 2020 and 2021 would be eligible for the deduction. It also means tested. So if you made more than $75,000 as an individual or $100,000 filing jointly, then you wouldn't qualify for that deduction. But for the vast majority of Marylanders who received unemployment benefits, they would receive a tax deduction this year on the money they got from the UI system. Amendment number 3 undertakes the largest single increase in the earned income tax credit in Maryland history. As you may know, the EITC is the single strongest anti-poverty program that we have in the state in a lot of ways. It's gotten support from both sides of the aisle. Democrats like it because it helps people at the lower end of the income spectrum. Ronald Reagan, who helped, ensconce it in our law in 1986, liked it because it encourages people to work, because it's an earned income tax credit. We would increase our refundability in Maryland from 28% to 45%. What that would mean, as an example, for a family of with 2 kids who qualifies at the maximum amount would be approximately $1,100 annually from the EITC. We also match the federal EITC for people without dependents 100%, and that's because the federal EITC for people without dependents is comparatively low. You'll recall that this was an idea that was presented by Delegate Wilkins in a separate piece of legislation earlier in the session. The combined impact of these changes to the EITC mean that for a family, as I said before, with 2 kids who's maxing out their EITC benefit, they would get $500 in immediate stimulus. And then through their taxes on the EITC every year for the next 3 years, approximately $1,100 for a total of a little less than $4,000. At the end of that time, the increased EITC sunsets, but could be extended by a future legislature. Amendment number 4, now we're getting into sort of the business-related provisions of the bill. So the centerpiece of the governor's proposals around business support was what's called a sales tax vendor credit. Essentially, in a vendor credit, what you do is you have a business that collects sales tax, and instead of remitting the entirety of the sales tax collected back to the state, they get to keep some of it. The governor proposed that over the next 4 months, any business that had less than $100,000 of revenue a month, so this is small business targeted, would be able to keep up to $3,000 per month of the sales tax they've collected. So under the amended version of the bill, those businesses, sales tax collecting businesses, which is not every business, we'll get to that in a second, they would be able to retain about $9,000 that they would never have to pay back. That would essentially be a $9,000 subsidy. Amendment number 5 is really a technical fix to something we did last year. You'll recall that last year we passed legislation creating a new tax system for PTEs to allow them to avoid the damage done by the federal tax reform to people who would normally be able to deduct state and local income taxes. We passed that right at the end of session last year, if you'll recall, to help small businesses in Maryland. The language here has been requested by the staff at the comptroller's office. It's essentially corrective language to make sure that that proposal is revenue neutral as it was intended to be. Amendment number 6 has to do with the unemployment insurance system. And this is the major business support that the House added. So you'll recall that I mentioned earlier, the sales tax vendor credit only applies to businesses that charge sales taxes. Doesn't apply to services-based businesses. It doesn't apply to nonprofits, at least those nonprofits that don't have sales taxes. What our amendments propose to do, essentially, is to give any employer, services-based business, goods-based business, nonprofit, who has employees and pays unemployment insurance tax in the state of Maryland, who has 50 or fewer employees, to give them what is essentially a 1-year interest-free loan for the cost of those UI taxes. Put more accurately, they won't have to pay their UI taxes till January 31st, 2022. Now, it's a deferment. It's not forgiveness. So those taxes would eventually have to be paid. But in the meantime, the businesses and nonprofits would be able to hold on to that money. In order to make sure that the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund has the money it needs, the state of Maryland will be borrowing from the federal government under a program the feds have created at a very low rate of interest. So if every eligible business and nonprofit in the state took advantage of this, it would be worth about $1 billion of small business and nonprofit relief over the next year. The state of Maryland will be on the hook for about $20 million. That's the interest payment on the federal loan. We've also approached some of our federal partners about the possibility of some or all of that loan to the state being forgiven, in which case we would be at a very different place in terms of that repayment issue. The Senate's $520 million that they added has been negotiated back and forth. There will be approximately now 296 million, I think is the number that we ended up at. That will go to many of the same programs that the Senate identified. Much of that will be dealt with through a supplemental budget and a budget amendment that the governor would be bringing down to the Appropriations Committee, and then our friends on appropriations would be dealing with it. I would highlight for you that, again, the position of the House has been, let's target as much help as we can to the people that need it. And so in that package, we have, I think, about $85 million of utility assistance for people that have fallen behind on paying their utility costs, some money related to schools, and some money related to food programs and food banks. There's, I think, a lot of good stuff in there.
I think, Delegate Lutke, I think part of what you were getting to as well in moving from that 520 to the 296 million was kinds of programs that could get money in people's hands immediately and not things that would rely on grants or other programs that may take months or a lot longer to get to them. Is that correct?
That was our goal as much as possible, to make these things automatic or to make them easy so that, you know, frankly, we don't see some of the problems that every state has had in equitably distributing grants and loans and things like that.
All right. We do have a question from Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Lukey, for presenting this bill. I just have a question in terms of the unemployment insurance with the potentiality for forgiveness of that loan from the federal government.
Yeah.
So let's say that everything goes as we would like it, and these debts are forgiven. there's been a question about is this now taxable income? Is there a fee on that? So that's my first question. If some of these loans, quote unquote, do get forgiven, is that treated as an income stream? And then the second question, if they're not forgiven and the business eventually goes under, let's just say it can't keep its head above water, what happens with that loan repayment? So two-part question on the UI.
I'll refer to George to make sure I'm technically correct, particularly on the latter question. I will say that I was referring to them as loans because I think it's the easiest way to understand what we're doing here, but they are not
Certainly
formally loans. As we are just deferring tax payments essentially.
Okay.
But George, do you have more to add on that and the question of what happens if a business goes out of business before January?
Unfortunately, I do not have any additional information to provide with respect to that. As Delegate Luke indicated, the obligation to pay a contribution or reimbursement would still exist.
Okay. Thank you both.
No, I just, seeing that Mr. Romans is here from DLS, I didn't know if you were here to answer any of those questions. Or you're here for another reason, but I let you in anyway.
I was here to answer questions about the spending components of the bill.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next person, Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric or Delegate Luke, I had a question. I don't know if I missed this or if you didn't say it. The original Hogan component that addressed the experience rating for unemployment insurance, that's still in here, right?
Yeah, and that's my mistake. I forgot to mention that. That is still in the bill.
And I think that's a great thing for businesses. I mean, it's not their fault. Many of them had to lay people off. So that's in the bill. That's really one of the important provisions. Thanks.
Delegate Lasanthi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the business loan forgiveness piece, I have a question about that authority. Received some questions about other state programs that do business loans, like enterprise tax credits and things like that. Established programs that we have that we are using to loan to businesses that have also had to close or not be able to make their payments. Does this authority extend to the financing authority to be able to forgive those as well, or renegotiate terms?
I'll let George backstop me here again. My understanding of the way the language is related, it was written, George, it's pandemic related loans and grants.
That is correct, sir. So it would be for federal, state, or local government grants or loans that a person applied for on or after March 5th, 2020. That was the date that the declaration of state of emergency was declared. And that was provided to the person for the purpose of assisting with the economic hardships resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. So specifically pandemic-related aid.
Okay, all right.
So the tax that somebody would normally have to pay for a forgiven loan would not be paid for any of those programs.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Delegate Lutke, did you have anything else to explain in terms of the amendment itself, or did you want to move the amendment?
I'm happy to move the amendment, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I was waiting for our usual seconder, but he looked like.
You didn't hear me?
All right, the amendments have been moved and seconded. Any other questions? All those in favor of the amendments?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Delegate. Back to you, Delegate Lutke. Oh, I'm sorry. There is a question. Delegate Feldmark, did you have a question?
I think I was premature because the bill as amended hasn't been moved yet, correct?
Delegate Lutke.
Sorry.
I move the bill as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Feldmark with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to our Majority Leader Subcommittee Chair and to everyone who worked on this. I know it's been a really heavy lift on a short time frame. I know one of the issues we discussed was expanding the assistance available to individuals and families, and expanding it beyond those who receive the earned income tax credit, but to other taxpayers who meet those income eligibility guidelines. And I hope that we can continue to work on that. I know there's discussion about, how that might fit into this bill or how we can work it into other bills. I think it's really important that we include our entire community and recognize that there's a lot of need for aid for folks who either may not qualify for or simply haven't applied or claimed the earned income tax credit. So I appreciate all the work we've done to get to this point, and I hope we'll continue working that is an unmet need. So thank you.
Delegate Feldmark, thank you for raising that, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think, as I mentioned a couple of times, our position from early on in the House was let's target help to everyone who needs it. And while I think this is a very, very good bill, there's no such thing as a perfect bill. And I think we still have some more work to do on economic support. And you are correct. Not everybody who is eligible for the EITC applies for it. And I should mention, we did include some new language that would require the comptroller to more proactively reach out to people who are clearly eligible but didn't claim it, to make sure that frankly, the federal dollars that flow through the EITC get into those families' hands and then come into the state, as well as the state dollars.
And thank you, Delegate Feldmark, because that's a problem with all of our benefits and tax programs, trying to get them into all the hands that are that qualify and that need it. Delegate Hartman with a question.
Yes, thank you. So with all the amendments, do we know what the fiscal note of the new bill is?
We do not have final fiscal numbers from DLS. My understanding is that it's less than what it was when it came out of the Senate.
No ballpark.
I'm not DLS. They're working on revised estimates,
Okay.
but I think likely it's dropped at least a couple $100 million from the 1.5 billion that the Senate was at. I think it's probably closer to 1.1 or 1.2, but that's me just throwing darts at the wall right now. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Delegate Hartman. Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to echo Delegate Feldmark's sentiments. Very much appreciate all of the work that has gone into the legislation and the thoughtful position that the House is taking in terms of all of this. And just look forward to continuing the conversations to make sure that all Marylanders who need assistance. So thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Delegate Lukey and our chair and everyone who's been working at rapid pace. We've been moving really, really quickly, and I think we're all still wrapping our heads around all of the provisions, but we want to make sure that we get these benefits into the hands of Marylanders and their families as soon as possible. I just wanted to also add that, from my understanding of conversations and before we take this vote, that this is a major bill, but not the only opportunity that we'll have to make sure that all Marylanders who are struggling are able to see relief from us. And so I'm taking this vote with the understanding that we're continuing to work. We have a lot of bills to work through still. And I appreciate all the work that was put into this.
Thank you, Delegate Wilkins. Are there any other questions for Delegate Lutke? If not, there has been a motion and a second. I'll just take a voice vote, making sure Pat and Sarah are listening in as they always do. Oh, we do have a question. Delegate Long?
Unmute yourself.
Your microphone's not on, Delegate Long.
Well, yeah, will we have a chance to explain our vote once we vote?
I don't think so, because we have a hearing starting soon and staff needs to stop the Zoom and start it up again so we can start on time. But I think, you and everyone else have that opportunity, as always, with all types of communications with your constituents. So just all those in favor of Senate Bill 496 as amended,
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you all. It's unanimous. It's 1:22 p.m. We start our hearing in 8 minutes, so that's not much of a break for any of us to take.
Madam Chair,
Cool.
I did want to unfortunately advise everyone that I just got a text that Delegate Shoemaker's mother passed away this morning, and that's why he's not. So I hope everybody takes a moment to keep him in our prayers and thoughts today.
Oh,
You said that his mother?
His mother passed away this morning.
geez.
I believe, you can ask Delegate Rose, but I believe he did, she was put in hospice and he was able to spend some time with her this
He
week.
was there with her today. Yeah.
So sorry. So if everyone with his cell number want to, I just sent him a message about 20 minutes ago and I didn't know that she had since passed, but
Yeah.
if everyone can send him a message and keep he and his family in your prayers. Thank you, Delegate Buckle. Otherwise, I will see everyone in 7 minutes.